In 1969, James Webb was a lean, mean fighting machine, a Marine lieutenant in Vietnam, living a grim, almost subhuman existence of patrols and ambushes, sleeping on the ground and drinking water from bomb craters.
Neil Meyer and I were company commanders at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
When he gets together with his fellow officers from back in the day, they sing a little ditty of their time in Vietnam.
It came back to me. Hey, and it's off to Vietnam. Lose a leg, a losing arm, and be pensioned by the Corps forevermore.
It's a far cry from Halls of Montezuma.
And it kind of fits. Marine Corps gallows humor.
The Marines suffered more killed and wounded in Vietnam than in any other of America's wars, including World War II.
In 1969, the year that I was in Vietnam, we lost twice as many American dead as we have lost in Iraq and Afghanistan combined in the entire war in both those countries.
No Vietnam veteran has written more thoughtfully about his experiences than Webb. First, in 1978, with the novel Fields of Fire, which became a bestseller at a time when nobody wanted to hear about the war.
There had been nothing yet that was written that attempted to preserve the dignity of the people who served. And so I was turned down by, I think, a dozen publishers.
At one point in the book, one of your characters says, "We just went around the bush and then we left." Was all that misery and death pointless?
No, I don't think it was pointless. You know, I think the people who stepped up to serve their country during a very difficult time need to be honored for it.
That same fierce pride of service animates his newly published memoir, I Heard My Country Calling, published by CBS's Simon & Schuster.
The people who were with us in the Marine Corps largely are the finest people that I've ever met.
The book is about more than Vietnam. It's about growing up in a military family where the father, an Air Force pilot, was often gone on missions like the Berlin airlift.
When I was a little kid, I used to take that picture of bed with me every night.
He wrote his memoir in this office overlooking Washington and the Iwo Jima Memorial, that great symbol of American valor. Inside, he has his own mementos from that savage World War II battlefield.
So these are literally the sands of Iwo Jima.
Iwo Jima, and the round that was fired during the battle.
His office is only a short walk away from Arlington National Cemetery, where he frequently goes with his wife. Today, to visit the grave of Corporal James Ward.
You do that, you give him a salute?
I visit this grave every year on this day. Yeah.
May 9th, so this was the
It's actually the day that he was killed in action.
And he was under your command?
He was a squad leader. He was a very fine Marine. We recommended him for the Congressional Medal of Honor when he was killed. He received a Navy Cross, the second highest award our country can give.
Webb also received the Navy Cross for his service in Vietnam, during which he suffered wounds that forced him to retire from the Marine Corps. He went on to become a Secretary of the Navy under President Reagan and a one-term Democratic senator from Virginia. But Vietnam keeps pulling him back to the fields of fire, back to a place the Marines called Arizona Valley.
I think what happened to the villagers is the greatest tragedy of the war.
Did you do them any good while you were there in 1969?
We did our job, you know.
Did that do them any good?
I'm not so sure.
His son went with him on one trip and afterwards enlisted in the Marine Corps.
My son served in Iraq. He was a Marine Lance Corporal, infantry guy in Ramadi during some of the worst fighting of the war.
A war then Senator Webb vehemently opposed.
It's hard to be in combat, but emotionally, there's nothing harder than having your kid in combat and not knowing, every morning, not knowing whether he's alive.
When President Bush asked Webb how his son was doing, Webb frostily replied, "That's between my boy and myself," an incident Webb refuses to explain.
Well, let's just say maybe he and I both had a bad day.
but which is easy to understand when you read this passage from his memoir.
I and my fellow combat veterans stand on one side of a great impassable divide with the rest of the world on the other. What's the divide?
There's a great Marine Corps saying, and it's that if you were there, I don't need to explain it to you, and if you weren't there, I can't explain it to you. That's the divide.
But he can explain the meaning of Arlington Cemetery, where his parents are buried just a few rows down from that young Marine corporal he lost in Vietnam.
The enormity of this place is what I love. And the notion that this is our national shrine to military service and sacrifice. And, you know, I can get lost in this place for hours and see the stories out of, you know, headstones of people who you'll never even know who they are. And that's every bit as important to me as my own family here.
And then there are the words inscribed on Arlington's Confederate War Memorial.
Not for fame or reward, not for place or for rank, not lured by ambition or goaded by necessity, but in simple obedience to duty as they understood it. And every single person who has stepped forward to go to a place like Afghanistan or Ramadi or Vietnam deserves that respect.